Heresy Act 2 is here. And let me just say, guys, it is jam-packed. We not only have the new act and all that it has to offer, but we also have Guardian Games, which launched with a brand new activity. We've got Lotus Eater, which is the new Void Rocket sidearm, which is dropping from Nightfalls, which happens to be double drops this week. But the focus of today's video, though, is going to be all about the Court of Blades. This is the new seasonal activity, and this directly ties into the Act 2 story quests, which for those of you that have already done the quests, it's crazy. Dude, I don't know what it is, man. Bungie, for some reason, nails Hive stuff. Now, to start things off, the very first step of this quest is to complete one run of the Court of Blades. So let's actually take a look at the first step and then start breaking things down. The Court of Blades is a new activity in Act 2, which acts as homage to the OG Court of Oryx from back in Destiny 1. Now, this activity at its core is a boss rush game mode that tasks you with defeating as many bosses as you can before the timer runs out. Now, every run of Court of Blades, either on standard or on expert difficulty, will have a 10-minute timer. Now, upon loading into the activity, you'll need to kill some enemies here in the Hall of Souls. But a quick note, right underneath where you spawn, there'll be a worm that you can pick up. Make sure you do this, as we're going to need it later on in this quest. Now, once all those enemies are dealt with, your objective will update and it'll simply state kneel. This will spawn 3 areas on the ground, which you and your teammates will have to stand in order to start the encounter. Similar to Coil from Season of the Wish. Now, this is also where we can see our first set of augments and hazards that will be displayed on these thrall statues on either side of the portal. Now, these will change each time you complete a combat encounter. You'll essentially come back to this main hub area, and the first encounter will only have 2, but from there onward, we will always have 4 total, usually having 3 augments and 1 hazard. But this can also be split with 2 of each. Now, the difference between augments and hazards are that augments are things that will directly affect the run, or they are tied to dealing damage to the boss. For example, the augment called Adapt states that counter a challenger's regenerating shield by matching its elemental type. So if you're wondering why the hell isn't this boss's solar shield going away and you're using a void weapon, that's probably why. Now, hazards, on the other hand, are pretty much meant to be a nuisance. They aren't going to directly affect mechanics of the run, but they're going to make completing that encounter much more difficult. One example of this is the hazard Gaze of the Deep, which reads, avoid the gaze of that which spreads suffocating terror. Now, this spawns in those giant eyeballs that we've been seeing this entire episode, which will give us stacks of suffocating terror. Now, once you reach 20 stacks, you die. So watch out for them, guys. And remember, so long as the eyes aren't in your field of view, you will not get any stacks. Now, the actual gameplay loop of this activity is very simple. You enter the portal, which will take you to one of 3 areas. You've got Rathmore Subterrane on Europa, Remnant of Silver on Io, or the Hive Warship in an unknown location. Now, you teleport to one of those areas, you'll kill one boss, which will then cause another boss to spawn in, and then you'll kill them. You'll exit the area through the portal and continue to repeat this process until you either A, kill 13 challengers, which are the bosses, or B, you run out of time. Now, if you do run out of time, the timer will change to say final round, which will be located right there at the top of your screen. Now, this will actually allow you to complete whatever encounter that you're on before ending the activity. So even if you have, say, 10 seconds left before entering the last encounter to kill your 13th enemy, you're good. Just prepare accordingly, because the game will actually give you the opportunity to clear that encounter, which is great. Now, in between rooms, however, you do have a brief moment to get some upgrades. These can be purchased at these Hive statues here. Now, to buy these upgrades, you'll need to have either a tier 1, a tier 2, or a tier 3 rune, which you can see here in the bottom left hand of your screen. And you'll get this from either killing a boss or completing an augment challenge, or when you're in the hub area. Now, how do you actually earn these different tiers? When you kill a boss, you will always receive 2 runes, which, as you can see, will fill up this meter down here. Now, completing an augment challenge before its timer runs out will also fill 2 on the meter. Now, it seems you need a total of 6 runes to progress from tier 1 to tier 2. Then, based on the meter shown, it looks to be 7 runes to go from tier 2 to tier 3. Now, you don't have to spend these runes, of course. If you want to save up for, say, a tier 3 right away, you can certainly do that, as this carries over across encounters. But be warned, if you have a tier 2 rune and you buy a tier 1, that will eat all the runes. You cannot get, say, 2 tier 1 runes with a tier 2. So make your purchases wisely. Now, the runes themselves, we know, will change daily. And this was stated by Bungie during the dev livestream, and you can even see this in the modifier in game. So the runes that are present here may be different from the ones that you're seeing. Now each tier offers increasing bonuses for tier 1. An example of this is Ritual of Greed. This actually spawns darkness splinters around the encounter area for you to collect, and upon collecting 3, you get a permanent increase to your energy regeneration rates. Then for tier 2, we have Taken Retribution, which causes a Taken Seeker to literally shoot out of you when you take damage. Then for tier 3, we saw Umbral Explosives, which essentially gives you the Warlock Exotic Sunbracers as an upgrade. So yes, guys, some of these get incredibly potent. Now in this area, you'll also have access to a heavy ammo box. Keep in mind though, this does not top off your ammo completely. It just fills up a portion of your heavy and your special ammo. The good thing is that this amount can also be increased with some new upgrades at the Shaping Slab that we're going to touch on here later. Now in the Hall of Souls, the activity timer is paused, essentially giving you 45 seconds to buy upgrades, or more importantly, read the augments that you're about to encounter. The next encounter won't start until either the timer reaches 0 or your entire fire team is standing in their places. Now, if there's one important piece of advice here, it would be simply to just read. And I know I'm terrible at it myself, but there will be times during these encounters where you're going to notice that you're just hitting straight up immunes on bosses. And you may be sitting there scratching your head wondering, how the hell did I end up in this situation? This is why reading the augments are super beneficial. It can tell you things like, hey, if you stand in that Taken icky on the ground, this will cause the boss to become immune. Now, once you get a couple of runs in and you start to become more familiar with these augments, you can essentially just ignore them, at least on standard mode. Most of the time, you could just brute force the bosses, and honestly, that is your best bet to ensure that you complete the activity with the max number of enemies defeated to earn that platinum score. But being familiar with the mechanics will definitely make this entire thing a lot easier, because if you can't damage the boss, then you can't complete the encounter. Now, as mentioned earlier, there is an expert version of Court of Blades, just like the expert version of the Nether. This is where you'll get adept versions of the Act 2 Heresy weapons to drop, with a small chance of getting the ever-elusive shiny adept weapon, which still eludes me to this day, at least a god roll. The one time I get an adept that's shiny, it ends up being garbage. Now, mechanic and gameplay-wise, there is no difference here between the expert and standard difficulty modes for Court of Blades. The only thing that changes is you now have to deal with champions. And of course, the enemies do hit you a lot harder, so be prepared. No lie, guys, we actually just rocked trace rifles with bolt charge, and it did pretty good for me. Yes, we're going to be doing damage testing on trace rifles here very soon, because the artifact mods definitely want us to use them. Now, once you complete your first run of Court of Blades, you will now progress to step 2, which says to discover and investigate the strange rift in the Nether. So now we're going to need to load into the Nether activity. And essentially, we're going to be progressing through the different areas looking for these green tears, which actually work like the Witch Queen symbols from Act 1. Then you're going to walk up to them, interact with them, and you're going to get some dialogue from Eris herself. Here we had 2 symbols to pick up in the Hall of Souls, which was our starting area. One was in the middle of the center area, right here, and the other was located to the right of that area on this ramp. Now, once you interact with these 2, you're now good to progress through the encounter, which will open up the next area. Now, the next load zone that we got teleported to was the Trenchway. This is where we interacted with our last 2 tears. Now, just continuing from where you exit from the last area, you're gonna pop up right here, and you can see your third rift that you can grab. Now, the location of the final rift was in the spawn area of the Trenchway. Just run all the way to the right of the room, and it's in the center of this protruding edge. Now, after you collect this last rift, you're good to go. We can now head back to Eris's apartment to interact with the Shaping Slab for the next step. No need to finish the Nether activity, guys. You can now pull out. Now, upon interacting with the Shaping Slab in Eris's apartment, you will auto-complete the 3rd step, and you'll also receive your first Will Breaker shard. Now, steps 4 states that we need to start collecting more of those shards in order to reforge the Will Breaker sword. Now, in order to get more of those shards, we have to complete some new quests. And you can actually pick up these quests right here at the Shaping Slab. Just click on over to the 2nd page, and make sure you pick up all of them. Now, for this particular quest, though, you only need to acquire 2 more shards, but you might as well just pick them all up. Now, each of these quests are pretty simple, and they give you a Will Breaker shard, as well as seasonal gear, scissor shards, and essence of desire. Now, the first one you can pick up is called Shattered Will Vorok, Sentinel Eternal. This requires you to defeat Vorok and claim his sword within the Nether, along with killing 50 knights. Now, the next quest is Will Breaker Dreadnought. This requires you to collect 5 Will Breaker shards within the Nether or Court of Blades. Now, within the Nether, these shards can be found randomly within chests, and in Court of Blades, they are protected by challengers. The third option here is called Shattered Shards, an entity manifested. Now with this quest, you are tasked with locating and destroying the expression of many across the Cosmodrome. Now really, you just load up into the Cosmodrome and you'll see that they're marked on the map for you, but essentially located in the Lunar Complex, the Gateway, as well as close to Dock 13 inside of the Cosmodrome. Now, I will say that those three really are not that difficult, but if you want to just go for the two easier ones, the second two are pretty fast. One being Shattered Shards, Lost in Prophecy, where you need to defeat a boss within the Prophecy dungeon, and then also kill Taken anywhere in the system. Now, you can just do the first encounter of Prophecy, which is really easy, guys. You can actually skip this first area by sorting your way up to the top, and if you got a grapple, this makes things a lot easier, but you can kill the Phalanx, which will count as that last Prophecy boss, and this will also complete the powerful taking kills portion of that quest. Now the last quest that we actually completed was Shattered Shards, Innermost Power. This simply requires us to get ability kills on either Taken or Hive enemies. Now you can just defeat those enemies in Heresy activities. This provides more progress to the counter, or you can head over to Shuri-Chi, which has a ton of Taken enemies. You can also do Grasp of Avarice, which has a lot of Hive enemies. And as you pick up the Ingrams, this of course refreshes your abilities, but I was using things like Insurmountable Skull Fort and just getting melee kills over and over. But I will say, guys, all 5 of these really are not that difficult. The only one that's a bit questionable is spawning in Vorok. You want to spawn into the Mausoleum, which is that area with all like the tendrils and stuff. And then that area with like all the platforms and stuff, you want to run under there where those plates are. And you want to activate those fires, which will immediately spawn in Vorok. Now you still got to do a second step after that, which includes killing a bunch of Taken enemies or Hive enemies with your sword. But that's essentially how you spawn in that boss. Now once you've collected your 2 Willbreaker shards from whichever quest that you want to do, you then head back to the Shaping Slab once again. You'll receive the rewards for those quests, along with progressing to step 5 of the quests. Now, you may run into an issue where your quests will say that you only have to collect 2 out of the 3 Willbreaker shards when you've actually completed those quests. What fixed our instance here was picking up the rest of those quests from the Shaping Slab if you hadn't done so to begin with. That actually fixed our issue here of not having progress and gave us the ability to move forward with step 5. Now, this is where that worm pickup comes into play from the first run of Court of Blades. After picking up that worm, you will have a new mission to load into called Writ Path of Ambition. In our run, this was a little confusing as this quest actually wants you to do a mission called Renaissance. Now, this doesn't show up on our destinations menu. And even more confusing is that our quest tracker wanted us to run Writ Path of Ambition. Now, the instructions could have been worded here a little bit better, but you just need to load into that mission before Renaissance is unlocked. Now, this mission is super simple. You're basically just retracing your steps through the derealized mission, except with way less obstacles to overcome. You're just going to follow the path shown here, and you're going to make your way through all of these portals. You're going to jump on some different blinds to reach the next couple of portals, and you're going to end up at the doorway from the derealized mission, except it's completely overtaken with blinds. Along with the mini boss wizard that you need to kill. Now, once you kill the wizard, you should now only have to stand on the plate and you'll get teleported. Now, I say should because in our run, this actually bugged out like crazy. You see, you're supposed to get torn between dimensions like in a King's Fall raid and then have the ability to walk through the doorway. Now, once you walk into the main boss room, the big Taken eyes will appear and will debuff you with that suffocating terror. And shortly after, you'll get teleported into the Thunderdome where the Shaping Slab is. Now, once you're in this area, you're supposed to sit here, kill all the ads, and essentially just survive. However, in one of my editor's runs, he was teleporting literally back and forth between the Dreadnought and the Thunderdome area with like a lot of screen shake. And this also didn't allow him to get any kills that he needed to progress. Now, they actually thought they were soft locked here, but eventually they did figure out the workaround, which was essentially just killing yourself until you spawned in the Thunderdome, which would then allow you to get kills. Pretty jarring nonetheless. Now, once done here, you'll now have the Renaissance mission available, which will be in the same spot on the destination screen. Now, this is located on the Dreadnought, and it isn't too tough of a mission, so don't worry too much about your loadouts. Upon loading in, though, you'll spawn into the Mausoleum in front of Drifter. He'll give you the lowdown and then have you move on forward through the founts towards the waypoint marker on your screen. Now, once you get there, you'll notice that you're in the room with that large hive grinder thing, which is actually what we're going to be using to reforge the Willbreaker sword, which will be making use of the shards that we collected. Now, you're going to interact with the forge, and you're going to see some text pop up on the screen that says that the forge hungers for taken wills. Just pretty self-explanatory. Just kill the taken that are spawning in, which would then feed the forge. Now, once the forge is fully powered up, you'll see on the left-hand side, the Drifter uses a hive ritual to conjure crystallized essence. Now, this will spawn in 3 purple crystals that you can shoot, which will then spawn in a blight on top of the grinder in the middle of the room. Now, the mechanic here is basically the same as the burst augmentation from Court of Blades, or from the bomb mechanic from King's Fall. You just gotta stand next to the blight to activate it as a bomb, and then run to cover in the marked dome, which will be located where you just shot the crystals. Now, you're gonna repeat this process 3 times, and then you can grab the reforged Willbreaker sword from the middle of the room. Now, once the sword is in your hands, the mission objective will change to demonstrate sword logic, which just requires you to get kills with the relic sword. Now, once this is complete, you just need to continue on following the marker to the Hall of Souls. Now, the marker will bring you to the central area in the Hall of Souls, and will task you with using the Willbreaker sword once more. Now, the objective here is to enact vengeance. So essentially, just lay out for a bit with the sword, and then 2 big Rift Keeper Knights will spawn in that you just need to burn down, and once the 2 of them are killed, a different looking portal will spawn in on the top of the platform, which would then create another green rift. Now, this should end the mission and will fly you into the next part of the quest. Now, let me just say, we got some spoilers here, so if you don't want to see any, click away now. Now, from here, you're going to end up at the Noiseless Chantry, which is labeled as none other than Eris's throne room. It looks good, man. Drifter and Eris will talk for a bit, giving you some juicy dialogue. No tongue though. And once the dialogue portion is finished up, you get a damn good cutscene, especially considering this is for seasonal content, or I guess in this case, episodic content. I highly recommend watching it if you haven't, guys. Some fantastic imagery with the Hive Sisters, along with Eris being an absolute beast. Super solid stuff. Now, once you're finished here with the cutscene, as well as looking around the throne world, you can now head back through the Green Rift, which will take you to Eris's apartment. This is for step 8 of the quest, which has you interacting with the Shaping Slab once again. You'll receive another loot drop, some sigil stones, along with some essence of desire to use as you see fit. And that ends the story quest for this week. We get hit with the Eris is alive. We should take a moment to celebrate and await further instructions from Eris, which means you should all be sitting at step 9. However, we have some other stuff that we can do while we wait until next week. Now, if you remember earlier in the quest steps, we had to do the Writ Part of Ambition quests. Now, since this was already completed, we could just interact with the Shaping Slab to receive our rewards, which will be some more gear, some sigil shards, and taken mastery reputation. Along with this though, you'll notice a new totem next to the Shaping Slab, which gives you the option to embrace your ambition. Upon doing so and interacting with the Shaping Slab another time, you'll see that we have an entirely new reward track to work through. This will be how you switch between the Mastery Resolved, that being Act 1, and the Mastery of Ambition Act 2 reward tracks and buffs. Now, the Mastery of Ambition reward track includes Rank 2, Metastasize Essentia, Rank 3, Engraving Unraveling Orbs, which is an artifact boost. This is a really good boost here, guys. Essentially, strand weapons deal increased damage to strand debuff targets. Rank 4, Power of Ambition Fragile mod. Rapid hits with this weapon grant blind rounds, dealing damage over time to targets hit by this weapon. Strong against overload champions. Rank 5, we have Ardent Force, where using your grenade ability removes a stack of suffocating terror. Rank 6, Amorphous Scripture, Ultimate Power. Rank 7, Engraving Elemental Siphon, which is an artifact boost, which states that elemental pickups grant matching super energy when collected. You can imagine how disgusting this will be with Geomax and Onyx Traces. Rank 8 is more Essentia. Rank 9 is Undying Hunger, which states that at maximum suffocating terror stacks, your health will quickly deteriorate. Rank 10 is Amorphous Scripture Ultimate Power. Rank 11 is Engraving Twisted Horde, which is an artifact boost, which states that dealing damage generates multiple threadlings. Rank 12 is Sumptuous Repass. Consuming a Sigil Stone will clear all stacks of Suffocating Terror, increasing damage dealt. Now, along with these new upgrades, we also have 2 more updates to the Mastery of Resolve reward track, which is what we were working off of in Act 1. We have rank 11 Engraving Malign Harvest, which is an artifact boost, which states that weaken targets to receive a small void overshield. Rank 12 is Moment of Clarity. Destroying a Sigil Stone will clear all stacks of Suffocating Terror, providing immunity to further Suffocating Terror gains for a period of time. Now, along with these track upgrades, we also have new Runic Enhancements, which are the boons you can apply to yourself within the Nether and now the Court of Blades. Now, from left to right, these start to progressively cost more sigils. You've got Sigil Runes, which is 100, which states that you receive Sigil Shards for every tier purchase. Might want to pick that one up first. Adaptive Rune, which allows you to gain access to 2 armament purchase interactions. You have Armament Runes, which states at the end of the round crate provides increased ammo. Convergent Rune, which states that you gain access to 2-path exclusive armament purchase interactions. Echelon Rune, which states that mini-boss final blows have a chance to increase rune empowerment. Defeating champions improves that chance. Effectuate Rune, which provides a chance to generate more Essence of Desire upon activity completion. Higher performance improves the chance guaranteed with platinum rewards. The Orgon Rune, which restores super energy the first time an augment is completed before the timer runs out. Available once per round. Remunerate Rune states that your first purchase refunds the rune that was spent. Available once per run. That one looks nasty, man. Accelerant Rune allows you to spend Sigil Shards at the Taken Altar to increase your rune empowerment. And Adamantine Rune, which increases damage dealt and reduces damage received based on your rune empowerment. These are all very, very good runes, guys, across the board, and they're gonna make a big difference in your Court of Blade runs. Now, you also have access to new options in the Mysterium upgrade menu under the Scrolls of Blades. You've got your Taken Ward, which reduces damage from taken in episodic activities. This requires the Path of Resolve active in the Court of Blades. You've got the Hive Ward, which reduces damage from Hive in episodic activities. Same requirement as well. The Dread Ward, which reduces damage from Dread in episodic activities. The Taken Surge, which increases damage dealt to Taken in all episodic activities, which is the same for Hive Surge, but for Hive, and Dread Surge, but against Dread. Now, as for rewards for Act 2 of Heresy, we have 5 new weapons added to the Heretical Arsenal, all of which can be focused with the Tome of Want. We have the brand new Strand Glaive called Refusal of the Call, which is our first ever Strand Glaive. We have the Mirror Mago, which is a Strand 900 round per minute SMG, which is actually an adaptive frame, something we don't have many of. We have the Enemesis, which is a Void Limeway Bow, which we already reviewed. It's incredibly disgusting, guys, with some fantastic perk combinations. Another weapon that was dropping from Act 1, but you can focus for it now in Act 2, is the Afterlight. This is a Void Adaptive Fusion Rifle, and it can roll combinations like Discord and Reservoir Burst. Then lastly, we have Division. This is an Arc Heavy Burst sidearm. Another archetype we don't have many of. This one looks pretty juice, guys. Got things like Volt Shot and Eddy Current. Personally, one of my favorite archetypes for sidearms in PvP. Now, these all come with the same origin trait, that being Willing Vessel, with the shiny variants also coming with Runneth Over. Now, every one of these have that same sexy Dreadnought look, with the Adept versions taking it to that next level. Now, it's still the first day, guys. We're still figuring everything out. We had a lot that dropped on us with extended maintenance that didn't allow us to get into the game as early as we wanted. We'll be covering Barrow Dyad, though, as soon as we can, as well as our Guardian Games guide right after this one. For my folks that are actually up at this hour, thank you so much for being here with us. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.